there's this silent, this really high-stakes moment that I think every leader eventually faces. It's that one decision that will either instantly build up a ton of trust with your team or just quietly, chip it away.
Right.
And we're not talking about, like, writing some big ethical mission statement for the website.
No, not at all.
We're talking about those small, gritty moments where your culture is actually forged.
Exactly. And for far too long, integrity has been sort of pushed into this box of being a personal virtue.
Something you hope for.
Right, something aspirational. You just hope your team has it. But our sources today are really clear. In today's environment where everything is transparent, relying on hope is just a massive liability.
So our mission for this deep dive is to try and close that gap. We want to move integrity from being this, this moral ideal you preach about to a scalable, measurable system, something you can actually build. The real strategic advantage today goes to leaders who can operationalize character.
Operationalize character, I like that.
Yeah, embed it into hiring, into performance reviews, into every single daily behavior.
And if you're wondering why this is all coming to a head right now, I mean, just look at the landscape.
It's completely different.
Relentless public scrutiny, remote work that's blurring all the old lines of oversight. AI is raising ethical questions we don't even have words for yet.
And a reputation can just collapse. I mean, overnight.
Over one small inconsistency. So you can't rely on the individual goodness of your people anymore. The system has to support them.
And that's really the core idea here, isn't it? That integrity doesn't just trickle down from the top. It has to be built. It has to be reinforced and multiplied through systems.
That's the core concept. And to build those systems, we have to start by redefining what integrity even is.
Okay.
Because the popular understanding, which is basically just honesty, not telling lies.
Yeah.
It's just not enough. It's fundamentally insufficient. Honesty is a tactic, an action. Integrity is a state of being. It is wholeness.
Let's unpack that. Wholeness.
Yeah.
Our sources point to this ancient concept of Tom.
Yeah.
And it's not just about telling the truth. It's about completeness, utter consistency. So if integrity means being whole, what does that actually look like inside a company?
Okay, think of it like a perfectly integrated piece of software. I mean, every module, every subroutine, every line of code, it all works together. Seamlessly, no friction.
No bugs.
No bugs, exactly. Tom is the seamlessness of the soul.
Yeah.
There's no separation between the values you talk about in the boardroom and, the way you act in a private message. Or, and this is critical, how you make budget decisions.
That reminds me of the biblical parallel that was cited. King David shepherding Israel according to the integrity of his heart.
Tom Love.
So leadership quality is tied directly to this internal wholeness.
Precisely. And if that's the ideal, then the biggest mistake we see everywhere, the core fallacy, is believing that hiring a bunch of people with high individual integrity is enough.
It's like building a magnificent building on, shifting sand.
That's the exact analogy from the sources. And the sand always shifts, doesn't it? A system that's built on flawed policies, bad incentives, inconsistent rules.
Will crush even the best people.
It will inevitably crush the integrity of the most virtuous person. They're forced to compromise just to survive in that organization.
So how do you get that alignment right?
Well, when you do, it creates what the sources call the integrity multiplier. Integrity doesn't just add up, it scales exponentially when two things align.
Okay, what else?
First is purity of motive. The team has to see that your decisions are for the mission, for the collective good, not just for you.
Not self-interest.
Right. And second is consistency of action. They have to see those values reflected in the hardest choices. Who gets promoted, who gets corrected, how the money is actually spent.
I can see the multiplier effect there. If I see my boss make one really difficult, self-sacrificing choice based on our values, I trust them 10 times more than if they just talk about values for a year.
Absolutely.
Which brings up a tricky point. If integrity is so powerful, where does it usually start to break down?
It almost always starts small. With the seemingly minor breaches, it's that slippery slope of tolerating the little foxes.
The little foxes.
Yeah, we're talking about bending a policy just this once, or, that tiny lie on an expense report that's only $50.
It seems so trivial, but culturally, it's devastating.
It is. The old wisdom is so relevant here. Catch us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards. When you trivialize these small things, you send a huge cultural signal.
Which is?
That the stated standard is not the real standard. Every single decision you make is either a deposit into the trust account or a withdrawal. There's no in between.
Okay, but what about the big one? The single most dangerous vulnerability, I think our sources called it the misalignment pitfall.
Yes.
This is when this system starts rewarding outcomes over ethics. We're talking about the toxic superstar.
Right. This is the most painful decision any leader has to make. You're so tempted to tolerate that high performer who cuts corners. You rationalize it. You say their amazing contribution outweighs the cost of their bad behavior.
Okay, but let's be practical for a second. If someone is bringing in $10 million in revenue, isn't managing their bad attitude or, their corner cutting just part of being a manager in a high-growth world? How do you justify firing your top producer?
Because the cost is never just their attitude. The cost is systemic. When you tolerate that toxic superstar, you send 3 immediate catastrophic signals to everyone else.
What's the first one?
First, your integrity charter is a lie. Everyone now knows it. Second, justice is only for the weak. The rules only apply to the average performers, not the stars.
And the third?
And this is the most damaging. It proves that results always trump character. And you know what happens then? Your high integrity people, your best people, they leave. And the ones who stay, they learn to be cynical. That $10 million in revenue today just bought you $50 million in cultural debt down the road.
That really reframes the whole equation. So what's going on inside the leader's head that even lets them make that compromise? We talked about this inner battle for their Tom.
The sources point to 3 big corruptors of motive. First, the idol of recognition, ego. This drives leaders to mask failures or inflate results because their whole identity is wrapped up in looking successful.
We see that all the time, inflating projections, hiding bad metrics before an earnings call.
The second is the fear of loss, insecurity. This is what leads to glossing over real problems or avoiding those tough conversations because you're afraid of the conflict.
And the third one, the real shortcut, is the tyranny of expediency.
Exactly. This is the mindset that whispers a small ethical bend is necessary for the greater good. It's compromise, dressed up in noble language. You convince yourself you're doing it for the company, but really you're just trading long-term integrity for a short-term win.
Okay, so to fight that constant pressure, we need a system. Let's get into the accountability code. It's a framework to turn these virtues into measurable outcomes, and it's built on 3 pillars. Pillar 1, transform decisions. The clarity principle.
This is all about removing ambiguity before you're in a crisis. You want to make integrity the default setting, not some heroic choice you have to make under pressure. We love the concept of the Ulysses Pact here.
The Ulysses Pact, that sounds ancient. How does that apply to a quarterly business review?
It's simple, really. You make the rules when you're clear-headed and rational, so you can't cheat later when you're tempted. Ulysses knew he'd be tempted by the siren song to crash his ship.
So he tied himself to the mast.
He pre-committed. A leader has to pre-commit to their ethical lines, knowing that immense pressure to cross them is coming.
So instead of asking, what should I do now in the moment of panic, the question is, what did our code require me to do back when I was rational?
Precisely. And that leads to the main tool here, the 3 questions for moral due diligence.
Okay. What are they?
These are your daily checks. Number 1, the public witness test. How would this decision look on the front page of the news tomorrow, motives and all?
Oh.
Number 2, the reversibility test. If this goes wrong, can we undo it easily? Or is the damage catastrophic? And 3, the foundational value test. Does this violate even one of our stated non-negotiables?
That's very clear. So pillar 2 says, inspire loyalty, the covenant principle. Loyalty is earned, not demanded. What's the foundation for that?
It's rooted in this idea of reliable commitment and predictable justice. The ancient word for it is hest.
Hest.
Think of it as management showing up for their team reliably, consistently. It's not transactional. It's a deep commitment that builds psychological safety and real trust.
And fairness, that predictable justice, that's the mechanism for loyalty. The perception of unfairness is probably the most toxic thing in any culture.
It absolutely is. Justice here means the rules have to be blind.
So the corrective action applies to the superstar, just like it applies to the brand new hire.
Without question. And this commitment to fairness is why integrity is the secret multiplier in the classic trust equation.
Right, which is trust equals reliability plus competence plus intimacy, all divided by self-interest.
Exactly. When you operate with integrity, you maximize reliability, you maximize competence, you maximize authenticity because you are seen as whole. And crucially, you shrink that denominator self-interest because your motives are seen as pure.
Okay, that leaves pillar the 3rd, build influence, the kingdom principle. This is the ultimate payoff.
And it translates directly into something called trust economics. High integrity is a massive competitive advantage because it radically reduces your transaction cost.
Oh, so.
Well, when trust is high, contracts are simpler, negotiations are faster, all that internal friction just disappears. You stop wasting time on compliance and managing conflicts.
And it builds up your reputation capital, which is like an organizational shock absorber.
That's a perfect way to put it. When a crisis hits your industry, the company with deep reputation capital has so much more resilience, so much more forgiveness from the public. Integrity isn't a cost center. It generates strategic capital.
All right, let's shift from the architecture to the nuts and bolts. How do you implement this? It has to start at the very beginning, right? The hiring process.
It's the primary gatekeeper. Character has to be the non-negotiable prerequisite, maybe even above technical skill.
So how do you screen for that?
You have to move away from asking, what would you do if? Because anyone can give the textbook answer. You have to use behavioral interviewing. Tell me about a time when...
You're looking for evidence of their past choices.
You're probing for their Tom. You're looking for integrity risk in candidates who maybe self-justify everything or lack self-awareness.
Let's give our listeners the 3 key integrity probing questions you recommend. The first one is the pressure test.
For this one, you ask them to detail a time they had to deliver bad news that made them look bad to a boss or a client.
And you're looking for...
Did they sacrifice the truth to protect their ego? Or did they own the failure, even when it was painful?
Okay. The second one is the conflict test.
Here, you ask them to describe a time they stepped in when a colleague was acting unethically, even if it was something minor. This shows their willingness to risk social capital to uphold a standard. Did they look the other way because it was easier?
Or do they speak up?
Even when it was uncomfortable, yes.
And the last one, the ownership test.
You ask them to walk you through a significant professional failure that was 100% their fault.
You're testing for humility.
Humility and self-reflection. Someone with low integrity will blame everyone else, the market, the client, their team. A person with Tom will say, here's the mistake I made, here's what I learned, and here's how I own the consequences.
These are great. They force people out of theory and into the reality of their choices. But you can't stop there. You have to measure integrity after they're hired, too.
Oh, absolutely. Integrity has to stop being this intangible thing. You have to adopt what we call a blended scorecard for performance reviews. Blended.
We advocate a 50-50 split. 50% is the results, the what, and 50% is the behavior, the how.
But how do you practically measure something like behavior? Can you give us some examples of those metrics?
Sure, they take some thought to design, but you could have a transparency index, for example. It measures how often a manager proactively discloses a problem before it becomes a crisis. Another is a team trust score, from anonymous 360-degree feedback, focusing on perceived consistency and reliability.
And the enforcement rule here is the most critical piece, right? It goes back to that toxic superstar problem.
It's the absolute linchpin. The rule has to be non-negotiable. An employee who hits every performance target but scores poorly on the integrity metrics.
So they got results by steamrolling their team or hiding risks.
Correct.
Yeah.
That employee must not get the highest rating or the biggest bonus, period. You are making it official that integrity is half of their job.
That's a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
It's building an architecture for long-term health, not just chasing short-term gain. And that's the whole framework. It transforms integrity from an individual hope into an organizational system, a system that secures trust, reduces friction, and builds real, lasting influence.
You know, we started this whole deep dive by asking if integrity is important, but I think the real question the source material leaves us with is, can you afford to lead without it?
I don't think you can. Not anymore.
It's not just about some internal sense of purity. It's about modeling a sustainable and alternative model of success in the world. The final lesson here seems to be that the organization that consistently chooses its mission and its character over a temporary advantage.
It gains an enduring moral authority. And that is a strategic asset that no amount of money or expediency can ever buy.